Great. Well, let me start with my sequester camp mask. Ray thought it would be really nice to do a quick roll call of everybody on so that we can, so that it helps mitigate isolation just a little bit so that we all know who's on with us. And I'll take off my mask because it's hard to speak with that on. We've got Alan Carney, Ann Biggs, welcome. Ann Harland, welcome. Carol Armstrong, Claire Cialone, I know Claire from New York. And Jennifer, you've met Claire too. Dan Tomlinson, Edie Campbell, Gary Harner, Jack Gerblick, welcome Jack. Jennifer Fletcher, hi Jen. Kathy Senecal, oh Kathy, I'm glad you're here. Len Goldberg, good to see you. Mark Stone is here. We'll be hearing from Mark in a little bit. Martin Kavanaugh, Maureen Williams, Miranda Collin, oh, Trish Jackson, hey Trish. Pauline Scuderi, I'm sorry if I messed up your name, Pauline. Ray Jordan from Arizona, Robert Gosowski, Sander Karp, Sharon Marmaris, and Susie Kanuski, Suze from the West Coast. So glad you guys are all here. Thank you for joining us today. We've got quite a turnout for our sequester camp today. So let me just start by welcoming everyone back to our weekly series of FSHD Society Sequester Camp webinars. We've created this webinar series especially for our FSHD community. We're going to run this every Thursday at the same time for as long as we need it to share information, resources, and especially our social support. We're also, I think, streaming this live on Facebook, so you can join us from there as well. I think I got the thumbs up from Krista that we are now live on Facebook, so you can join us there too. Before we get started, I just want to update everyone on the Voice of the Patient meeting with the FDA that was originally scheduled for next week, April 21st. We've confirmed a new date with the FDA, June 29th. Mark your calendars. As of now, we're still planning for an in-person meeting, but we're really keeping a close eye on the climate for the social distancing and the regional mandates. We will have a backup plan in place if needed. We'll move the meeting to a virtual format, but the date will stay the same, June 29th. We've reopened those pre-event surveys to help make your voice heard. So if you haven't had a chance to take the surveys, you now have until May 31st, and we will be compiling all the responses from those surveys and sending them to the FDA. They can be found on our website along with all the other information and details. And I will copy the link in the chat. Krista, if you could please make Mark a panelist so that he can just say a few words here. I would appreciate it. Great. Mark is muted, and Mark, I don't know if you want to give us a couple of words on the whole Voice of the Patient meeting on June 29th.
Absolutely. We're still moving forward with that, as Beth said. It's vitally important, and it's part of our overall strategy, and having to redo and reimagine is the word I keep using. We've had to reimagine some of our research and therapeutic development programs. But the good news I can tell you is, because of the really excellent and creative and innovative work of our staff, we've not altered or adjusted our timelines any. Just like we can, we're working a virtual as well as an in-person meeting with the FDA. We just met with the FDA yesterday, again in a monthly meeting. They're on board. Our consultants and that we had hired are doing this. We're not the first ones they're doing this with. They've done this with others, and they're going to continue to do this through June. We believe we're going to get in front of this and that kind of thing. We're also repurposing our International Research Congress, and it has the potential of being bigger and broader and more global than ever, because we're going with a virtual, 2-day virtual format for that also. Some of the workshops that we are doing that will then spin off into the Therapeutic Accelerator Project, we've repurposed for virtual. All that to say this, we're not slowing down at all. And as a matter of fact, our community engagement team led by Beth has, came up with the sequester camp and some of those things. And some of those numbers, especially through our Facebook Live streams, are mind-blowing. 1,900 people signed up and logged in one of them. 1,300 people another week saw us and participated. And so that's great. We want to continue to bring good content. I'm well aware of the time I'm taking from our wonderful guest, Jen. So I want to make sure I cut this short because there's many, many good things that we're doing. We're still doing our spring fundraising campaign because, well, we've just approved a round of grants, and all of the projects that we have lined up that are going to be needing funding are still going to be needing funding. And we're going to figure out a way somehow. That's one thing I've learned from our families. And with this, I'll quit. You find a way. If there's an alteration in function over here, you find a way over here. And that indomitable spirit permeates our staff and has impacted and permeated me. And we are finding a way together. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm excited to hear, Jen, what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So now with that, we can get started. Today, on our 5th of our Sequester Camp webinars, we're going to explore caring for ourselves during difficult times. Your well-being is top of mind for us. In addition to good physical health, it's just as important to make sure that your mind and spirit are healthy too, right? So our special guest today is the amazing Dr. Jennifer Egert. She's a clinical psychologist in private practice in New York City, and she offers mindfulness-based psychotherapy, ACT or acceptance and commitment therapy, and workshops in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. All big words that I don't understand what they are. Hopefully she can explain some of them. Today, she's going to discuss the emotional impact of this time, tips on how to get through it, and she's going to teach us some brief relaxation and mindfulness exercises maybe. So without further ado, my good friend, Dr. Jennifer Egert.
Thanks, Beth. I sincerely hope that the background is, I think it left. Good, thank goodness. It sort of represents everything that we're going through right now, all of these plans that we all have in place, all these things that we intended, and then all of these new challenges come in and they're unexpected, and here we are just moving our way through day in and day out. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, June, Beth, and everyone at the FSHD Society. I'm really grateful to be here. It's nice to connect with everybody. Let me see, we're gonna share the screen here so that I can share this. I'm not gonna talk too much today. I wanna kind of keep it short so that we can have opportunities for talking to one another, and that things will evolve over time. But for me, it always helps to kind of organize myself by putting together a presentation in this way. So when June asked me if I would do this, I of course said yes, and wondering, what is it that I can really speak about? And as I was sitting there in front of my computer this morning, I was staring at this blank PowerPoint screen like, okay, what can I say? What can I say? How do we find grounding at this time? Was the first question that came to me. How do we find a way to accept the wide range of emotions that are coming up for each and every one of us? And everyone's experience is so radically different from one another. Anxiety, fears about our own health and well-being, fears about the health and well-being of the people around us, income changes, things that were so normal and ordinary, like going to the grocery store, now really become very big and potentially scary and dangerous actions. So everything has changed for us. How do I accept that I'm feeling anxious and sad or grief, fear? And also the question that came to me is, how am I going to make it through? And then fill in the blank, whatever that is for you. How am I going to make it through the illness of somebody I care about? How am I going to make it through not going to work? How am I going to make it through being alone? So many people are really isolated right now. And these are the kinds of questions that I know that have come up for me, have come up for a number of my patients, and I'm sure are coming up for a lot of people here. You know, and I don't have all the answers. You know, I might be a psychologist. I might, you know, help a lot of people with a wide range of issues, but this is totally unprecedented where we are. And even, you know, it's not even about answers here. I think the thing that I just keep coming back to is this idea, you know, I teach mindfulness, and it's a big part of how I work with people is teaching mindfulness, which is an approach really to life that comes originally from Buddhist psychology and Buddhist practice. And a big part of mindfulness is, how do I meet the present moment with acceptance? And when I say this word acceptance, I'm not saying that I like it. I'm not saying I want it. I'm not saying that it's happy and enjoyable. Rather, what I'm really referring to here, and what mindfulness writers and teachers talk about, is acceptance from the perspective of, this is actually my reality. And if I can't meet my reality as it is, accept that it is the reality, then I'm going to be in a fight with reality. You know, there's a wonderful writer, Eckhart Tolle, who wrote Be Here Now and New Earth. And he one of the things he says, and it's very true, is that either I can accept reality or I can suffer. And I think that this is a big part of where we are right now, because it's very hard to accept what's happening right now. But we see that when we're in a fight with reality, we suffer. So part of what I keep coming back to, and I keep coming back to in my work with patients, is this idea that it's okay to be human. And of course you feel the way you feel. Of course you are sad. Of course you are lonely. Of course you are anxious. Of course you're also maybe enjoying the quiet time. I've moved out of my home in New York, and I'm living with my family, and I am definitely having moments of enjoyment, lots of moments of enjoyment of being with everybody right now. Of course I feel grateful sometimes. Of course I also am homesick and nervous. So for each of us, we have a wide range of emotions. And how do we allow what it is to be human, which is having this wide range of experience? And how do we have it with kindness? That we're not trying to tell ourselves, you shouldn't feel that way. You should be stronger than this. You're not allowed to cry. You shouldn't be worried about this stuff. You should be dealing with this. You should be writing the great American novel and cleaning out your entire attic. You know, how is it that we can actually just feel whatever it is we're feeling, and feel it with this attitude of kindness and compassion? There's a practice that Kristin Neff, who is a writer on self-compassion, uses, which is a self-compassion break. And we can all do this right now together. So let's do this. And it's very simple. We begin by just acknowledging, just taking a moment to sit. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. And maybe take a breath and recognize that you're sitting here right now, and notice whatever feelings might be going on inside of you. And the first step in the self-compassion break is to just acknowledge that there's difficulty here. Say, yeah, this is hard, or this is really uncomfortable. I really wish that this wasn't happening. It's a lot of suffering. So we start by acknowledging that this is what's happening. And then we can ask ourselves, let me just feel this. You know, it's already here. Let me just let it be there. And we could take one hand and put it over our heart and put the other hand on top of it and maybe even hold ourselves a little bit. Feel that pressure. Or you can do this with your hands, just holding your hands together. Feel yourself holding yourself. And then what it is you wish for yourself in the face of this difficulty. May I be kind to myself. I'm talking to myself like I'm a kid. You know, it's going to be okay, hon. You're going to find your way. It's not going to last forever. And just feel that comfort that we can offer ourselves, not trying to change it or make it go away, but acknowledging it. And just offering ourselves some comfort in the way that we would comfort our best friend or a family member or our child. So we can just let that practice go for now. But this facing what it is that is in front of us, whatever it is, with this kind compassion to ourselves. You know, there's a wonderful article that was in the New York Times this past week with Jack Kornfield, who is a mindfulness meditation teacher, very famous, written a lot of books and teaches all over the country. And he talked about the serenity prayer, you know, grant me the courage to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it really is this issue that so much of our suffering comes from trying to change the things that are really out of our control. You know, in this situation, there are many things that we have control over. We have control over how it is we take care of ourselves. We have control over how we are seeking support and help from other people. We have control over just a wide range. And then there's a lot of things that we don't have control over. And when we're in this fight with trying to change the things that we can't control, that's where much of our suffering comes from. The other piece is that we also can get very locked into the idea that where we're at right now is going to last forever. And I would ask every one of you that's feeling that right now to actually, if you can, think back on, 4.5 weeks ago, almost 5 weeks ago, when much of this really started. If you think about that time, how on earth could you imagine that you would have gotten through 4 or 5 weeks of what you've just gotten through? Could you even imagine it? We had no idea back then how we were going to do it, and yet we've already done it. So when I start thinking, oh my goodness, when am I ever going to get back home? I can't figure that out. How it's going to be figured out is every day. I get up, I go to work, I spend time with my family, I walk my dog, I do my life. And at some point, I will have found my way to get there. When we talk about coping through this time, I always look at everything in this holistic thing. It's not just my mind, it's not just my emotions, it's not just my body, but when we talk about self-care, which is really what this is about, like we have to look at ourselves as like babies that we're caring for, that we have to care for our bodies, in whatever way we're able to, without this idea that, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect in this and perfect in that. There's enough pressure on us, but to just be conscious that it's helpful to move our bodies in whatever way we can move our bodies and make sense for us. Helps the body to release stress. It's helpful that we get enough sleep. And during this time, under this much stress, we may need a lot more sleep and rest than we do normally. And to be mindful of that and to listen to the body. Watching the media consumption in terms of caring for the mind is something to be very aware of. If you are watching particularly the 24-hour news stations, they're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And it's making it in your brain on a neurobiological level, reliving it over and over and over again. We actually don't need to hear the same thing over and over and over again. And what that does on a neurobiological basis is kind of, it's like digging a groove that is the only thing you're going to think about. So really thinking about media and the news about all of this like nutrition. It's nutrition for your brain. You want wholesome sources that are reliable and non-inflammatory and helpful, and you don't want to overeat. So to consider, how much of this media I'm really taking in. Am I sitting and watching this all day long? Because how on earth can you think about anything else if that's the only thing that you're doing? And we might think that it's getting us closer to solving a problem, but it really isn't. So really noticing that. And there's a lot of options for counseling and support right now. If you really feel like you need additional support, there's so much that is available right now online. And people are welcome to reach out to me for some of those resources. I know more about what's going on in New York City just because that's where I am. And from the emotional perspective, connecting with other people, allowing this range, it's just human to feel what you're feeling right now. And I find that meditation practice and relaxation practice can be enormously helpful during this time. I have some resources which we'll figure out through Beth and June how to get to you, but I have a link to a Dropbox with a lot of relaxation exercises and meditations that are open, public, free for you to take advantage of. And there's other resources as well, which I'll tell you about. Early on in this, I saw this on Facebook, what the daily quarantine questions should be. And it just really struck me from a number of different perspectives about, every day, if it's possible, again, I don't mean to say this to pressure anyone, because I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of pressure that they have to get through this and be magnificent copers. And if you wish to eat potato chips and sit on your couch and binge watch The Office, then that is exactly what you should be doing right now. There's no pressure to be a perfect, sequester, candidate. So, but some of these things might be helpful as well. So I just wanted that side note that first is checking in with what I'm actually grateful for today. I'm really grateful to be here and connecting with this community. I'm really grateful that I have this community and it's been a part of my life for a while. I'm really grateful I'm with my parents and that they are healthy and well. I'm grateful that I am healthy and well. I'm grateful the people that I know that have had this are recovering. I'm grateful for so many things. Second is who am I checking in on or connecting with today? Because part of what's also helpful is getting support from others, but also giving support. And there may be a lot of people that are going through this completely alone, whether that's you or somebody else. So if it's you, making sure you check in, and maybe you supporting other people can be helpful. And the third one in particular, I think, is really striking, this idea of what expectations of normal am I letting go of today? And every day there's something that we're letting go of. And that's part of what we're going through right now. Expectations of normal. Am I getting outside today? And hopefully you can. I know not everybody can, and even just sitting by a window and feeling the fresh air can be very useful. Am I moving my body in whatever way that you are able to do? And also, what beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? Because everything isn't this. There's life that's happening too, and spring is happening. And there's moments in every day that we can tune into that I think can connect us with the things that actually haven't changed. A lot has changed, and then there's lots that haven't changed. And what of those things are things that bring me a sense of appreciation and beauty, or that you're creating and can contribute? I read this early on and it really struck me, by Kitty O'Meara, and maybe many of you have seen it. It's another thing going through Facebook and social media. And I think this was written like in the 1800s, during another time. What she writes is, and the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being, and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and curated new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. And I think that that's really what my wish is, for all of us as we go through here. That even, especially, not even in the most difficult times, but especially in the most difficult times, there's also this real opportunity to make some different choices if we're lucky enough to be in that position. So that's really all I wanted to say, and I just want to open it up to discussion and questions. There's some helpful resources here that I think it would be great for us to share. There are a few really great articles that there's so much that's out there right now, but these were the three that I feel have been helpful and that I've been sharing with my patients. One is that article I mentioned from Jack Kornfield to the New York Times. The second is David Kessler speaking to the Harvard Business Review about grief, because a lot of what we're feeling right now is grief. And we can't necessarily put our finger on it, but it's really where we are. And then the other one is about this pressure of doing it all, that you gotta somehow be, you know, a super COVID survivor. There's also, I'm part of this mindfulness meditation group in New York City, and there's so many of the teachers that are offering mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is an 8-week course, learning a wide range of mindfulness techniques, and they're doing it online. So might be a time to do something like that. And then I also provided the link to my Dropbox with all my meditation and relaxation audios. So I just wanted to share that all with you. And that is what I wish to share. And I don't know how we now switch to Q&A, but thank you.
You're awesome. That's all I'm going to say is you're awesome. Jen,
oh, goodness.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I especially appreciate that you validated that I can sit on the couch and binge The Office and eat a bag of potato chips. Because
oh my God, I'm almost done with season 2. I never watched like it really full. And I'm like, all right, I'm committing to The Office.
So thank you for validating that behavior.
Oh, please. Please. I mean, honestly, the key here is how do we be kind to ourselves? And how do we really ask ourselves, what do I need? Do I need to clean out the garage, which I actually did this past weekend for my parents. I just got into it, so I did it. With music on, as I was like dancing to like disco as I was doing this, because I needed that. I needed some lightness. And I'm also lying in bed with potato chips in The Office.
So we can take live questions or comments. The 2 ways you can do this is you can type a question in the Q&A and we'll read it aloud so Jennifer can answer it. Or there's a way that you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, we can actually hand you the microphone and you can talk your question to Jennifer. So feel free to put questions in the Q&A box or to raise your hand. But I think we've got some questions actually for you, Jen, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm trying to figure out, is there a way that I can see people? I guess in speaker view, I'm only seeing the speakers rather than.
Everyone else is hidden.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Oh, well.
Kind of like a confessional or something.
Step into the room.
Well, I may jump in since I do have a microphone. One of the things, and you'll have to share the resource list with us. If you can email later, I can post all of those links on the Sequester Camp website. So
Sure. I could also share it in the chat if that would be helpful.
well, if you can certainly do that, but I definitely want to post them on the website too, so we have them.
Happy to share.
Easy to find place. But something you mentioned, there was a piece about grief, and you talked about how a lot of what we are feeling is grief.
Yeah.
And that struck me because I feel like I'm seeing what might be manifestations of grief, but people aren't recognizing it. They're just, malaise, they're waking up in the middle of the night and so on. What are some of the ways in which grief can manifest where we can you help us recognize what grief might feel like?
Totally. Yeah. That's a really good question because, grief is such an individual experience. People can experience it in a lot of different ways. Some people get very irritable and angry even. Some people get very melancholy and sad. It affects the body. You can feel extremely fatigued or extremely tense. We all experience grief in different ways, which is why I think it's a lot easier to identify, anger, because there's a lot more shared thing. But grief is sort of multidimensional. There's like physical aspects of it. There's cognitive aspects of it, where it's just this seeing things through a lens of loss, or perhaps helplessness and hopelessness, which is a very normal part of grief. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talked about stages of grief, and there's a wonderful article in the Harvard Business Review. I highly recommend that people read it, where David Kessler is interviewed. And he wrote a book with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about grief. And, they talk about stages of grief, not that it's linear, because, we don't like go from a place of, shock to denial or, depression, and then kind of move our way through. But we might go back and forth, but there's many different phases that we can. In some moments it's just unbelievable, we're just in this state of shock and it's hard to accept the reality of it. We may go through a period of being really angry about our losses. I don't know about you, but my experience with a lot of people in my life, as well as patients, is that the first couple of weeks were all about anxiety. That everyone, it was just had turned us upside down, and everyone was extremely anxious. And then people moved into a depression stage where it was like, oh, here it is that we are. And I'm not talking about depression as in big D, major depressive episode, although for some people that might be the case, but just this really low feeling, level of exhaustion that we've never experienced before. We just like, I know that I went through that. I just couldn't understand why I was sleeping, and I just couldn't feel energy again. And a lot of patients were talking about that, and friends. Other stages are like sort of making bargains. Well, if I do this, then maybe God, you'll give me this, or bargaining with whatever person or fate that we might hope. And then the idea is that we hopefully move into a place of acceptance, but sometimes we never get there. Or we may get to a moment, we probably all had these moments through the past 5 weeks where we really accept, all right, I can do this. This is great. And then the next day we're like completely anxious again. So that we may weave in and out of all of these different stages, and it's all really normal. But one of the other things to know is that just because you're experiencing grief in one way, it doesn't mean that if you are living with other people, friends, family, they may experience grief in a very different way. And it can be hard sometimes when one person really just wants to get very quiet and isolate and kind of turn inward with their grief, and somebody else just wants to be with people and talk all the time. So there may be mismatches among the people that you are sheltering with, that and so to just be mindful of that. It doesn't mean that one person's coping well and the other one isn't. We just have different ways.
Yeah. Well, I think that is something remarkable right now, that people are in close proximity, day in, day out, day after day, in a very weird, diffuse, stressful situation where individuals are reacting differently, and to kind of navigate that, I think, is very challenging.
And you know what, June? We're doing it.
Yeah.
Imperfectly. Mm-hmm. Again, we're human, we're imperfect. So it's not like every day is great, but you know, we're somehow doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, circling back a little bit on the grief thing too, I think because I think people are grieving different things. There's such a disconnect. So you read about people who are really dealing with horrific tragedy, you know, because they're overnight losing a loved one and not being able to even say goodbye, not, you know, being not allowed to see them, you know, they're having to die alone, and it's just heart-wrenching. And so there may also be a feeling like, well, who am I to, do I even have a right to feel grief just because I'm stuck in my house, you know, or, you know, life has changed, but, you know, it's, so I wonder if that complicates to the way people can identify and cope with their feelings.
Yeah, I think that we can all very much relate to that, that when we might feel like, oh, well, you know, how am I to complain about what's going on with me? You know, my friend has no work at all. She doesn't know where her income is. I have work. I'm lucky. I'm grateful. And all of that is true, but it's also not a competition of our difficulties. There are people that are going through horrific situations right now, and there will be a lot of trauma from the losses that they're experiencing, from thinking about the nurses, the doctors, the healthcare workers that are working with patients that are dying every day and putting themselves at risk every day. And I'm working with some of them in my practice, and, you know, there is that. And there's also the kids who are graduating high school and college and are missing out on this whole time in their life, and these losses that they're experiencing, which are very deep and real to them, and plans for special events, my cousin's weddings that are put off, doing a Zoom 80th birthday for my father. Like, this is it. And you are entitled to feel what you feel about the losses you are having in your life. And the fact that other people are going through things that are harder to even begin to imagine, we can feel grateful for what we have. And we can also feel the loss. It's not either or. I can feel grateful for everything that I have that's enabling me to do what I'm doing now to try and keep safe. And I can feel loss, and I can feel the feelings. It's true for all of us. Mm-hmm. It's not either or.
Yeah. No, that's very wise. Also, with people being cooped up together, and I was talking about the stresses and so on, you talk about mindfulness practice kind of in the individual context. Is there something that family groups can do together to, you know, help each other through the...
It's a really good question. I think, at least in my experience, you know, sort of 51, you know, coming back to live with my parents again, we all need to find the ways where we respect when people need their own space, because we are in close proximity. And we all need to find that for ourselves. No, when is it that I really just need my space alone? And that everyone kind of all respects that. And what is it that we do together? What are the things that we can do together to be together? Whether it's games night or cooking together or whatever it is that you do as a family, movie night, bringing together, but recognizing that we need both, that we need our space and we need to make plans with our friends and talk on the phone with them separate from whoever it is that we're living with. From a mindfulness perspective, I always find it's really helpful to practice mindfulness, practice meditation together. I don't know if families are interested in that. There's so much going on right now, which is really amazing. There's so much going on in terms of meditation classes, yoga classes, all sorts of classes. Doesn't even have to do anything with meditation. But if there was something that the family wished to do together, that it could be their shared experience. It's a really good time to figure out where do we all come together? What do we all like to do together? And maybe we can find a class online, or we could tune into an instructional YouTube video to learn how to do something. We can plant a garden. We can order some seeds. We can do that together. We could, make a dance party. So depending on what it is you all wish to do, to have something that is the shared time and maybe shared project, and then things that are just for you.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn this back to Beth now. She has some concluding remarks.
Jennifer, I was tearing up there for a little bit because you hit the nail on the head a lot of times. So thank you. That was absolutely amazing. If anybody wants to learn anything more about Jennifer, I'm going to put her website in the chat. www.jenniferegert.com. Is that the good URL, Jen, for everybody if they want to come learn more about you and your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm doing in the chat, I don't know if this is going to come through. Yeah. So what I just put in and hopefully people can cut and paste it, but I'm going to also give it to June for the website, is that first article is that Jack Kornfeld article. And then the one about grief with David Kessler and the idea of the pressure of trying to do everything, not putting too much pressure on yourself, that article from the Chronicle. And then the Mindfulness Meditation NYC is a group of meditation teachers in New York City. They're doing a lot of teaching online. Oh, on Facebook Live. On Facebook, the Mindfulness Meditation Collaborative has its own Facebook page. And at noon, actually let me, hold on, I'm going to get it for you. So I can actually put the page right on there, but Facebook Live at noon every single day, we're doing mindfulness practices. So it's different teachers every day, doing different practices. Like I've been doing them as well. And the next one I'm doing, I think, is on Monday.
Awesome. Yeah, please share that. And we'll also post that on our website as well.
Okay.
Yeah, June, we'll be updating our Sequester Camp page with all of these recordings as well as all the links that Jennifer shared. Alan Carney actually shared with me personally a really cool document that we'll share the link for. It's called Anxiety in the Middle of COVID. And it's a great little tool as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so yeah, check back to our Sequester Camp webpage, we're calling it, for all of these recordings and all the links to all of this stuff. And be sure to tune in next week. We have 2 guest speakers next week, Johanna Hamill and Chad Heatwool. They're from the University of Rochester, and they're going to be talking about the research on patient-reported outcomes that can be used for future clinical trials. Couple of other things. Some of you may have seen the I Stay Home For campaign. Oh, that's not, there it is. It's kind of showing up. Oh, there we go. I Stay Home For campaign. You've seen it on social media. So if you're so inclined to participate in it, you can download this handy little sheet of paper from our website, fill it in with whatever you're staying home for, take a selfie, post it on your social media accounts, and use the hashtag I Stay Home For. or you can just send it to us and we'll share it on our social media. It's just a cool way that the world is kind of embracing the reason that you are staying home. Also know that on every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, our radio show celebrity, Tim Hollenbach, is hosting a weekly call-in radio show. It's live stream on Facebook, so you can either dial into his phone number that he'll post and you can talk to him, or you can just, you know, listen and post comments and just throw a virtual party on Facebook if you want to. That's every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern. And still on Wednesday afternoons, our beloved Belinda Miller, she's broadcasting her weekly book reading, the first children's book that she ever wrote. I forget what it's called. It's so sweet. She does that 2 o'clock. It takes about 30 minutes. She reads to the kids. And actually, I've been enjoying it as an adult. So tune in on Wednesday afternoons. And you can get all the details, of course, of all of these things on our Sequester Camp webpage. Keep an eye out for email updates. And we hope to see you again right here next week, same time, every Thursday, as long as we need it. So I'm going to end it now. Jennifer, thank you again so much for being here, for sharing, for making me cry. And I want everyone, everyone, please take care of yourselves and stay healthy and stay mindful.
Be well.
With that, we'll end today's webinar. Thank you.